All right. So, for those of you who recognize the name John Bolton, I think you do. We've actually spoken before. Former national security advisor in President Trump's administration in his first term. He's written a couple of books about Donald Trump. To be fair, not his biggest fan. But you know what? The thing that's going on right now, and it was interesting, we had a chance to speak earlier this afternoon. That's what you're going to hear in just a sec. But, you know, the talk lately, we talked about tariffs and this whole Canada annexation routine. I figured John Bolton, in his capacity as national security advisor, the question wouldn't be about tariffs. Clearly, the question is about this continued approach by the U.S. government, by the Trump administration, to suggest that Canada might, in fact, be a target for annexation and saying it would be better for Canada. So I began the conversation by asking John Bolton this. While you were working with Donald Trump in his first term, did discussions of Canada ever come up with respect to, say, something like annexing the country?
Never. And just to pick up on something you mentioned a few seconds ago, it is a joke. Look, Trump believes that relations between countries are determined by the personal relationships between the two leaders. So if he has a good relationship with Vladimir Putin, then the U.S. and Russia have a good relationship. Now, I don't say personal relationships have no import, but they don't determine the overall relations between governments. And for Trump, you know, if he has a bad relationship with a foreign leader, then he has a bad relationship with the company. He didn't like Justin Trudeau. And much of this, I think, is trolling. So instead of calling him Prime Minister Trudeau, he calls him Governor Trudeau. It's a big yuck, right? Very funny. He knows it irritates Trudeau. You could see it. He didn't apparently care enough because he's thinking only about Donald Trump to see that what he has done, both with respect to his rhetoric and specifically the tariffs, have upended Canadian political opinion polls to put the Liberal Party back in certainly a very competitive position to win your next election, having been 20 points down. Why didn't Trump care about that? Because he only cares about himself, and a little collateral damage to the Conservative Party of Canada. What does he care?
I would then ask if that's the case. We go back to that first meeting where Justin Trudeau felt it was so important at the time to become the first leader, by the way, of a foreign country, to go to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the president. And I think ever since then, Donald Trump has used that opportunity to suggest, and we don't know that it's the case, that when he asked Trudeau, about tariffs and whatever, that Canada or Trudeau told him, we'd be in dire straits if these tariffs actually went through. And that he used that as the bridge to suggest that then maybe the next thing, of course, would be for Canada to be annexed by the U.S.
I doubt it, but it was, it showed Trudeau didn't learn as much as he could have about dealing with Trump. Trump couldn't care less what happens to Canada economically, and he barely understands what's happening to the U.S. economically as a result of this economic illiteracy of the tariffs. What he cares about is what's good for Donald Trump. So your new prime minister has to come up with something that will convince Donald Trump he is better off personally. I don't mean financially necessarily, but better off politically, looks better. It all goes to the greater glory of Donald Trump to get off the tariffs. And maybe he can think of something, but saying it's going to hurt Canada isn't the ticket.
So do you believe then that there's no sort of truth to this idea that Donald Trump is trying to weaken Canada as much as he can economically to then provide that option to move in and say, hey, Canada, you need us now, and it's pretty obvious, then we would come crawling to him?
Well, even if he were smart enough to think that, it's not going to happen. And I don't think he's smart enough to think it. But people who defend Donald Trump say he's playing this very complex game of three-dimensional chess. No, he's not. He's totally transactional, ad hoc, episodic. I've described his decisions in his first term as like a big archipelago of dots. You can try and draw lines between them, but he can't. He doesn't have a philosophy. It's one step at a time, without regard to what the consequences are, other than the theme that unites every decision he makes, which is what's in this for Donald Trump.
Let me go back to your position as national security advisor, and I look at a couple of things that have happened over the past couple of weeks. Number one, the message to Iran, or the threat, if you will, to Iran. where Iran, maybe not surprisingly, pushed back and said, you know what, we're not going to be pushed around by a bully. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't know what Trump had in mind with that letter that he sent, but it's certainly the case that if Israel were ever going to take out Iran's nuclear weapons program, which it should, this is the time to do it. And so maybe that letter served the same purpose as the letter that George H.W. Bush tried to pass to Saddam Hussein after the invasion of Kuwait through Jim Baker meeting with Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz in Geneva, which basically said, get out or we're going to push you out. Tariq Aziz didn't pick up the letter, and the first Iraq War followed. If this is Trump's attempt to say, this is your last chance, I hope that's what his intent was, because I think that the world would be a lot better off if Iran's nuclear weapons program were in ruins.
But to your earlier point, if he doesn't think things through, then why send this letter in the first place, thinking it might result in an opportunity to take out the Iranian government?
Perhaps Netanyahu asked him to.
Okay, and then I guess the same would apply as far as Hamas go. There was a threat there. He said he would rain all hell on Hamas if they didn't cooperate. And they basically looked at that as a challenge, I guess, which they didn't take very seriously either.
Yeah, he hasn't rained hell on him either.
What's next there? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Neither does he.
All right, let me go back to Canada for just a second because
listen, I know this is frustrating.
Yeah.
But people who spend hours at a time trying to think through what Donald Trump's policy is and how he connects A to B to C are wasting their time. If you look at the through line, it's each decision somehow or another connects to Donald Trump's greater glory. That's what it's all about.
Do you put credence then in the fact that now, and I'll come back to what I started with tariffs, et cetera, that it will take, a bit of pain for Americans, regular, everyday, workaday Americans, to realize that the situation is getting worse, not better, and that will actually make a difference in Trump's decision maybe to change his mind on tariffs? Does that play?
Well, you would think so, except remember, under the 22nd Amendment, he can't run for a third term. There's a lot of loose talk about that, too, but it's not going to happen. The people who are going to be worried very quickly are Republican members of Congress, especially the House of Representatives, who have to run again in 2026. And that could be a serious problem for the Republican Party. But Trump doesn't care about the Republican Party. He cares about Trump. So it's the whole political game is very different in terms of constraining Trump or pushing Trump in the right direction than it was during his first term.
Just as a final question, do you ascribe to the theory then that if those Republicans or other people in the party begin to question what he's doing, that they could force him out? Is that a possibility?
Well, I don't think they can force him out, but they can certainly try and minimize the damage to the country and to the party by breaking with him. I think it's like a rock rolling downhill. Hopefully it picks up more steam, but right now Trump has still got a hold on the party in Congress, and I think it's beginning to crack, but it's, from my view, taking longer than it should.
I lied. I have one more question. What would you say? I mean, what would your play be now if you were here, if you were in Canada and trying to deal with these tariffs? What should the right approach be?
Well, I think Carney needs to find an argument to Trump that he will be better regarded in history for backing off the tariffs. Let him claim victory on something insignificant. Find a way out for him to allow him to convince himself that he achieved whatever goal he thought he was going to get, and his reputation historically will be better now by ending the war before it goes on any further.
All right. Mr. Bolton, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
John Bolton, interesting, former national security advisor to Donald Trump in his first administration. We're going to take our break for news and come back off that after 3:30 with one of the great stories in the news in a long, long time. Someone deciding to donate or give a $50 million gift to a local public institution, educational institution. That story's next.